want to see the movie.
I'm Dan Carlson, 1/3 of Two Kept Men, however that math works out.
I'm John Cadolf, the second third of Two Kept Men.
And I'm Dave, the drunken house guest of the Two Kept Men. Pleasure to see you both. Yep. It's been a week because you guys gave me two interesting and almost completely different toned films.
Cigarette Burns is, technically speaking, not a movie. It's an episode of a series, but it's for my money, it's John Carpenter's best work since his heyday. I think it really feels like something that came out of the era that kind of ended with They Live. He was on a streak there up until about They Live, and his stuff after that was kind of interesting, but it was not,
It's one of those ones, it's in my top 3 of John Carpenter films. So.
Yes.
It is definitely a winner.
Cigarette Burns is John Carpenter's contribution to the Showtime series Masters of Horror. Is it pre-Walking Dead Norman Reedus?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
Pre-Walking Dead Norman Reedus.
Pre-Walking Dead Norman Reedus is a film festival programmer / movie theater owner. He's in debt to his father-in-law, who he has convinced, with the help of his daughter, to help him fund his project of opening this theater that plays repertory titles like Deep Red and Suspiria, things like that. Where the title, of course, Cigarette Burns, if you've seen Fight Club and if you know anything about projection, refers to the little circles in the corner of the frame that tell you when to change the reel.
When it goes, boop.
Norman's in a lot of debt. He's been the victim of tragedy, which we might go into a little later. But so he needs money, and he needs it bad. And he gets an opportunity to make $200,000 by tracking down the rarest film in the world, La Fin Absolue du Monde, which means the absolute end of the world. It was made by a psychopath director called Hans Baklevic, I think. Mm-hmm. And everyone who touches this movie is affected, whether they end up dead or
even if they watch it or not. Apparently, just getting close to it.
Just getting close to it has an effect.
Udo Kier plays the collector.
Yeah, yes. and he's great. He delivers lines in this movie that out of anyone else's mouth would make you just burst out laughing. But he does it with this perfect tone, and I just think
I'm actually going to borrow Udo Kier's voice for a series of videos. Like, I'm going to do my own impression of him. We've been joking about ominous positivity, and I thought Udo Kier's voice would be perfect for that.
Ominous positivity, that describes Udo Kier to a T.
That, because his voice, the other way I described his voice is it's terrifyingly German.
Yes.
He sits there, it's like, you will help me find this film. It is a rare, lost, and wonderful legend.
Okay, so I'm going to give away a big spoiler here. He doesn't have the film, but he does have a prop from the film.
Yeah.
In the form of a living, imprisoned, mutilated angel.
Yes.
Who was in the film, and that we get the sense is the thing that causes the film to have such power, is that it shows an angel having its wings cut off. Uh-huh. But my question is, if you're a collector of rare items, how is it easier to get a hold of a mutilated angel than it is to get a hold of a film?
And to me, I think that's kind of the key part, is that the film itself is kind of like the ultimate MacGuffin. It exists in its own rather unique space, but It's something that the angel you could have found putting on some kind of like personal search or whatever, but the film basically evades you.
Wait a minute, a personal search for a mutilated angel?
Hey, I need a guy. He's got a couple of strange things on his back.
And I
Gotta
thought
point
you were
that
going to
out.
say, I thought you were going to say, on a,
Swipe left.
that the angel was like doing a stand up or something.
There we go. That or this is a film that's absolutely about obsession and addiction. Because there are
Definitely.
physical addictions, and then there's a need to own something that no one else has, and I think that part of the thing that makes Norman Reedus's character interesting is that his addiction is really the search for the next thing, and this is like his ultimate next thing search.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the most mythological lost film that you could think of. There's actually been a movie made since this called Antrim, the deadliest film ever made,
Huh.
which is a faux documentary about a lost film whose screening was accompanied by a fire that killed everybody in the theater. And I gotta think that they basically took the idea from cigarette burns. I've always been fascinated by movies that are harder to find. There's one, my personal one that I've always been interested in has been King Kong Arrives at Edo, or Appears at Edo. It was a Japanese movie made before all of the kaiju craze took over, and they did not have permission from Universal Studios to use King Kong. They just went and made it, and then it was never really granted a worldwide release because it was not sanctioned by the copyright owners. But then what happened to it is that around World War II, a lot of Japanese movies just got lost. There's a big percentage of Japanese movies that are just gone, and this is one of them. The only reason we know it exists is because one of the crew members is still alive, and some advertisements for it were out there. So to me, it's just I've always there's always been that that untouchable movie that you always wanted to get your hands on. So I'm immediately grabbed by this narrative because it reminds me of that tendency in myself.
Because I remember years and years ago hunting down through like fanzines and stuff and things, like bootlegs of shows or films that were made but couldn't be released either in the United States or in general due to rights issues or something. And there was something having it in your possession was cool, but there was something about knowing that something out there existed and you couldn't have it at that moment.
Yeah.
Was something that absolutely drove an awful lot of searching, just because it kind of gave you like you're some sort of like media Indiana Jones hunting down one.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. It's like an archaeological thing. It's
Alan Parker, who I believe passed today.
Yes.
He did a documentary with the Rolling Stones in 1972 that never got released, called Cocksucker Blues. And like bits and pieces of it have turned up on video, and you can now find it fairly easily. But back in the mid-90s, I went and tracked this sucker down. And it's mostly shot on black and white. The concert footage is amazing. But there's a lot of scenes of like, the band hanging around doing lines of coke or doing this or doing that. I think the reason they never released it was because
maybe the title was a drawback to releasing it.
That was like a working title, but you get the idea. But the overall point was the idea that Customs would never have let the Stones back in the States again if they'd seen this movie.
Really? Wow.
But the search for the film was absolutely one of those ones where I'm sitting there, hunting down rare film magazines and stuff like that until like somewhere in the back you could find it. Mm-hmm. And getting back to the review of this film, this is a way more involved search than any of us have ever done for a film. Yeah. He also has a rich guy's budget to do it. So,
well, not only does he have the rich guy's budget, but he has to meet a challenge. This movie is not given; it's earned, is what the one of the festival programmers tells him.
Yep.
And basically, he tracks down someone who has the address of the filmmaker's wife, and when he gets there, they make him earn the movie by forcing him to witness a murder.
Yep.
Yeah, a pretty grisly one as well. While they're filming it, yeah, the guy, beheads a woman and explains that when you do something so reprehensible and you put it on video, that the video holds power. And Reedus's character still doesn't believe that, ends up getting free and beats the crap out of this guy before getting the information and leaving. What you guys were talking about searching for rare stuff. My big thing was always rare and hard to find Dungeons and Dragons modules and stuff that. But as far as films go, Johnny Gets His Gun. Yeah, the movie that that inspired Metallica's One.
Yep.
That's the movie I still have never seen because I still can't seem to track it down anywhere.
It's not rare anymore. It's readily available. You can.
Is it?
Yeah, but it's a great movie. It's fantastic.
Just keep in mind that I would advise having a comedy and a bunch of antidepressants ready afterward.
Wow!
It's Jacob's Ladder ×3. Yeah.
Oh wow!
One of the things that really works in this movie is that it's deadly serious, but it's also riding that line where it's so extreme it's kind of funny. My favorite moment is they do actually screen the movie, and the usher that Udo Kier keeps in the house, he goes, "Oh, when Norman Reedus comes back, he goes, "Oh, you want to see the movie?" He goes, "No, I really don't." He goes, "Yes, you do." And he stabs himself in the eye with a knife. That made me go, "Oh!" But then he takes the knife out of his eye and stabs himself in the other eye.
Well, the whole time laughing hysterically.
Yeah,
he's got cuts all over his body at this point. But he's like, "Oh, you want to see the movie?"
It is so absolutely. It's one of those moments that's both kind of like comical and horrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a whole lot a person can say about this. I mean, you were talking earlier about the tragedy. It seems as though that his girlfriend was strung out on drugs, and
along with him, I believe.
Maybe along with him, but I think he straightened up real quick when he realized that was threatening his dream, and she ends up killing herself while overdosing in a bathtub. And of course, the father blames him, and he's doing everything he can to get past it himself and pay off this loan. Well, like you said earlier, this was the opportunity for him to do that, but he just couldn't believe. Now, I can identify with the character in a way that he doesn't understand the ability of film to physically affect a person. So I want to compare this to the works of H.P. Lovecraft and how he wrote so much about works of art or writings or things you see that can literally drive you completely insane.
Carpenter's own movie did that too, In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, well, and Carpenter's always been a big H.P. Lovecraft, fan, and was highly inspired on a lot of his stuff by that. I mean, The Thing is inspired by a book called Frozen Hell, I think, and that was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness. And so you get down this comparison to people nowadays looking at horror fiction and things like that from back in the 1930s, 40s, and saying, I don't understand why people felt this was horror, even cosmic horror or anything, because what is described in most of these stories is almost nothing compared to what we see up on the screen. And that's why it's so hard to take an H.P. Lovecraft film, or a story, I should say, and turn it into an H.P. Lovecraft film, because you have to somehow translate what he's trying to get across as so horrific it could drive you mad into something that you could put on screen, like The Color Out of Space. How do you do that visually to make it seem like it's an indescribable color? Well, I mean, you go into the UV spectrum and stuff like that, but as we saw done. But the thing is, that movie actually did a pretty good job of showing how something of that nature itself, or the extraterrestrial, horror causing madness. And so Reedus's character, again, he doesn't believe that that's possible, and it's a journey for him. And he also learns pretty expensively, of course, because he himself does something very drastic at the end of the film. One of my favorite scenes in the film is the angel's freedom.
Yes.
And the fact that butler comes in, hands him the key, and he just reaches down and strokes him on the head a little bit. He goes and gathers up the film and then he's walking down towards the screen. Did you notice that?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's walking down towards the screen with the films, and he turns to Norman Reedus's character, who is no longer able to hear him.
Kirby.
Yeah. Thank you. And says, "Thank you for this," and then continues walking towards the screen. So again, very interesting. It's like he's going to go back because he's bound to the film.
Well, it's like,
yeah,
it's like Reedus has almost been fated to bring the film back to the angel.
Yeah.
That sanctifies all of all the stuff that he went through in some way.
So that's my take, the rest of my take on the film. And gosh darn it, I give it definitely a press play.
Gosh darn it.
Gosh darn it. A press play of immense proportions.
It makes me think of The Devils.
Yeah.
That's a film that to this day has not been shown in this director's cut, except a few small screenings. And
that's one.
There's another possibility for us to search down and.
Yeah.
Oh well, good luck.
For me, it's a total press play. It's a film that's wonderfully about obsession and addiction and need, because Norman Reedus's character is, clearly obsessed with film, and has he's kind of like but the sort of character I think of as a dirtbag intellectual. He's very grounded, but he really absolutely immerses himself in everything that he does in terms of research and art and things along those lines. And it's also his stepping stone into a world that he really wants to be a part of. When you see him walking into Udo Kier's character's home, you can kind of see the absolute want and almost jealousy on his face for everything that this man has that he doesn't.
Yeah.
And so
that poster for the movie.
The poster for Nosferatu, they made a big point of showing, and I think they chose that one because it's a public domain title. I don't know if the posters.
But Nosferatu actually has an interesting history, because that film was a missing film for decades.
Yes.
It came out, and then Bram Stoker's estate sued.
Yeah.
And then they destroyed almost all of the prints, and there were only 2 working prints left, and that's where we kind of got the rest of the movie from.
Well, press play on Cigarette Burns.
Yes.
Press play.
Okay.
For sure.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.